Hello, Ben Appleby.
Morning, Adam Johnson. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Warm today, but yeah, all good.
It is warm. We were just saying that. We were just saying that. And hopefully nobody can see the sheen on our faces.
I know, right? We're so British though, aren't we? Like, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's not quite in the middle.
It's always two something. That should be like the catchphrase of Britain. Welcome to Britain. It's always two something.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm gonna try and sell that. Anyway, Ben, tell me some facts about yourself.
I'm a wedding photographer. I don't really dabble in video, but I'm definitely a photographer, apparently. But I started life as a musician. Based in Derbyshire. I work heavily in like a lot of flash work, a lot of artificial light, but trying to mix that in with a lot of like natural moments and things as well to kind of keep weddings as realistic as possible rather than making them like big production shows. But yeah, there's not a huge amount to me really. Like I say, I'm a photographer. I like to keep fit. I've got a house with pesky chickens and very annoying dogs, and that's pretty much the depth of me really.
Well, you say that, but we'll get to more. We'll get to more as we go through. I might as well say it up front. Quick congratulations that you recently completed an Ironman triathlon.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it was a challenge. I just wanted to do something before I was 40 in a few months' time. So I set myself, I thought, I've never really achieved anything athletic-wise. I've never done a marathon or anything like that. I was like, screw it. I'm just going to book an Ironman because it looked really cool. And I did. And that was it.
Well, I think that tells everybody everything they need to know about Ben Appleby, but maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe we'll come back to that later on, because you mentioned it briefly in your intro there. So what did you do before photography? What were you before you were a photographer?
So I was a musician. So my degree is in jazz. Apparently you can do a degree in that. So yeah, my degree's in jazz. I'm a sax player, and I toured the world just in bands before kind of finding photography and falling in love with photography.
Amazing. How long did you do that for?
So I bunked off the last year of uni to be on tour quite a lot. And then, so I was about 25. So a good 5 or 6 years touring professionally, and then all the stuff that sort of leads up to that as an amateur kind of before that. So yeah, it was a cool life, but bundling drunk guitarists onto planes and trying to keep hold of their passports in the middle of Russia and things became less fun. So I fell in love with photography and weddings because they're way more fun.
Oh, interesting. Because I would say anyone who hasn't lived that musician life would say that's the dream. So I was going to you've kind of answered it there, but I was going to say, so why would you give that up?
Oh, mate, it kind of is the dream. I miss being on stage. You stand there and there's it's the Robbie Williams saying, but you stand there and 10,000 people are like, yeah, let's do this. And you're on stage going, I'm great. And they're going, I agree. And that's amazing. But the logistics of I fell into managing the band and running the band as well as kind of playing in a band, and that sucked a little bit of the love out of things. And I think for me, I'd been there and I'd done it, and I didn't want to be away from Hannah all the time and be away from home all the time. And it was like a natural progression that the photography was starting to take off for me, and it meant that I could come home every night and just have a really nice life. So yeah, I've kind of ticked a box. I miss it, but yeah. It is the dream for sure, mostly.
Well, it's good that you've lived it then. It's good that you've lived it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, totally.
Let's quickly talk about Hannah, actually. So the HBA, what does it stand for?
So HBA is Hannah and Ben Appleby. That's us. So Hannah is the real brains behind everything in reality. She organizes me. She sends me where I need to go so I can just kind of turn up at weddings and be creative and be like the fool that just bumbles around weddings all the time. So yeah, it's very much a joint thing. But then she decided a couple of years ago, she just wanted a whole different career break and just to do something purely for herself. So she became a police officer. So we've got a completely separated career kind of path at the moment, but she still keeps an eye on things and makes sure I'm doing what I should be doing.
Still keeps an eye on you.
Most importantly, yeah, keeps an eye on me and make sure I don't spend too much on photography stuff.
Not just photography stuff. I came around to see you guys for breakfast on Monday, and only at that moment did Hannah find out you'd just bought a flamethrower.
It's absolutely true. But you know what? That flamethrower's gone back, not because of Hannah, but because it's broken and it's a cheap Amazon thing. So yeah. But Hannah working night shifts allowed me to have access to the internet during the daytime when she's not here. And that's lethal for buying stuff online.
It is. Did you just, I'm going off on a tangent, unplanned tangent here, but did you buy anything on Amazon Prime Day?
Do you know what? I didn't. I meant to do the Adobe subscription thing and forgot. And then there was some MagMod stuff that I was going to get and I forgot. So no, I didn't buy an Amazon Prime Day, and I'll probably do it today, which is, typical me, but hey.
Yeah, I didn't buy anything. Oh, I bought one thing.
What did you get?
A little flash trigger. And
the little Godox ones that people were talking about.
It was like 20 quid
I almost.
Thought, why not? Yeah.
I did. That's probably my purchase today will probably be that.
Yeah, at full price.
Annoyingly, yeah. Don't tell Hannah.
So you're a musician and you kind of decided that's coming to an end, and you mentioned that you fell in love with weddings, but how did that transition happen? Like how did you shoot your first wedding or decide that you were going to be a photographer? Were you being a photographer while you were a musician? Like how's the transition?
You're totally going to out me now as a photography fraud. But so when Hannah and I got married, I'd never been to a wedding. The first wedding I'd ever been to was my own wedding. And so I didn't know anything about photography. To cut a long story short, we booked somebody like super cheap. We didn't really care, or we didn't think we cared. Booked somebody dead cheap. And it was after when we got the photos that Hannah just said to me, like, how hard can it be to take a photo? Like, they charge quite a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, like, because you know what I had to do as a musician to earn 200 quid? I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to buy a camera. But before I bought a camera, I put like a website together. I did it all backwards. I'd like taken an image I've got on like a really crappy point and shoot camera, took a picture of a landscape, put it on my website with the HBA Photography, like contemporary wedding photographer or documentary, one of those wedding buzzwords, put that online that we had like 15 years ago. And somebody booked me and I was like, oh no, I've got to learn I've got to buy a camera first and foremost. And I've got to learn how to take a picture and make it look good. And that was it. I did my first wedding. I think it went well. I was the guy, like the day before, I traveled to the location. It was miles away typically. Traveled there with a notepad the day before. And I'd written down every location that I wanted to shoot, every setting that I was going to shoot at. I'd like planned it out. So I got like an ultimate idiot's guide, and then got to the day and it all went out the window. Nothing happened the way I planned it. And it was amazing. And that was it. Just sort of fell in love with photography and the unpredictability of weddings from there, really.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got so many questions.
Yeah,
I was going to say I've got so many questions for you now because I think I kind of knew that story, but not in that level of detail.
No, exactly. You probably didn't know that I was 100% black in it, but yeah.
No, I mean, not many of us like studied photography or have got into it in any traditional way. I don't think. And most of us have fallen into, or most of the people I speak to anyway, have kind of fallen into wedding photography, especially in one way or another. So I think it's just cool to hear people's backstories. And also when people are maybe watching this who want to get started, it's quite cool for them to know that there doesn't have to be a long, you don't have to do much basically to get started.
The barrier to entry is kind of low, isn't it? You can become a photographer without any qualification or like formal training or anything. As long, like I always say, as long as you care enough to do the best possible job you could do, like that's enough. As long as like your client's happy and you're happy, then photography is great like that because it's so subjective.
Yeah. And so how long ago would this first wedding have been for you?
So that's 16 years ago now.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the barrier to entry was higher back then. Cameras were more expensive and lenses were more, well, maybe lenses were probably about the same, but, cameras were more expensive back then. So,
true, but I had a massive eBay addiction at the time as well. So, my camera wasn't brand new. It was an eBay special. And so, yeah, but the barrier, like it was harder to get into photography then because there weren't like a plethora of YouTube tutorials. You couldn't just book onto a course and learn the thing you wanted to learn. You had to kind of make your own way a little bit. And that was kind of good because I think it made me work harder for the results that I wanted.
Yeah, definitely true. We'll talk about that in a minute. So let's just tangent off into gear then. What was your first camera that you shot a wedding with?
Oh, it was a 30D, Canon 30D. So I bought a Canon because I was touring with a guy who was into photography, and he had Canon as well, and I just like borrowed his lenses. And yeah, I bought Canon, and I've not bought anything since, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you shoot on now?
I'm on I switched to mirrorless begrudgingly. I was like super late to the party, but I switched to mirrorless a couple of years ago from the 5D Mark IVs, and I'm now on the what are they? The Canon standard mirrorless
R5, R6.
That's the R6, yeah. See, I told you, not a real photographer. I don't care about kit at all.
Well, that was my next question. Like, how much do you think about you? Like, are you just shooting Canon still because you've kind of gone through the Canon ecosystem and you've used Canon all that time? Is there anything more to it, or do you ever think about kit?
I do think about kit, but only like to be able to create something. So if I think to myself, like, I'm really struggling to do this, what can make my life either easier or the photo better quality? And then I'll think about kit and I'll research it and I'll like look into that to death. But in terms of camera systems, I always think that it's the photographer behind the camera. I know that's like a total cliche, but I've tried like Sony. I've got no problem with Sony's or Fuji, any other brand. I really have no problem. And I just think that you can still create the same photos because it's you that's taking the photo, not the camera, for the most part. Like, I'd love to rock up to a wedding and shoot Hasselblad all day long and have someone deal with the editing of that and all that, and that'd be amazing. But in reality, yeah, I don't think about kit enough to switch and change camera systems just because a new manufacturer's brought out something that's slightly better or slightly different or interesting. I'm kind of lazy like that.
No, true. Yeah, no, true. So why did you then? What was it that made you move from DSLR to mirrorless?
I think it was just like practicalities. My Mark IVs were like on their last legs, and it was a case of, do I like continue to repair, or do I buy like a new DSLR, or do I just like? It was a time where mirrors had been out for 3, 4, 5 years, and everybody was on like the Sonys, and everyone was switched to mirrorless. And it just didn't seem to make sense because that was the way that like the future was going in the industry. And it would have been crazy to buy new DSLRs for the sake of my own like stubbornness. So I thought, screw it. I've got to be sensible. And the mirrorless, like, it wasn't crazy expensive for me to change. I've still got my native lenses for the DSLRs, and I use those because they just work for me. So it was not a conscious decision to make a switch. It was just what do I buy next? I've got to replace these old cameras now. So what next? So yeah.
Interesting. And so I thought I'd resisted, and I moved to mirrorless in 2018, but you resisted a lot longer than I did.
Mate, mine was like just about COVID time when I finally made the switch. Like, yeah, I was a dinosaur to the party when it comes to mirrorless.
I don't know if you found this as well. I mean, I obviously we'll talk about the way you shoot and stuff in a minute, and but I found having an EVF a blessing and a curse. Like, it almost showed me too much what it might look like, and then I was not necessarily using the part of my brain that I had been using with the DSLR to kind of think, oh, it might look like this. I felt like that had been switched off for a while. Did you find the same?
100%. Yeah, I think you almost lose that creativity or that curiosity as to what a photo is going to look like because you can see before you even press the button. And I think it's made life easier as a photographer, but I don't necessarily think that's a good thing if you're trying to continue to exercise that like creative part of your brain or even just that photographic part of your brain, because you don't have to really think to make a good photo. Obviously, you've got to think a bit harder to make an amazing photo, but the camera does so much of the work for you. And I don't like that. I wish I could still be on my Mark IVs, but like I say.
But I guess linking it back to what you were saying before about the whole barrier to entry, getting started thing, it's way better if you're at that end of your career, because I remember, for instance, running out of churches, taking a load of pictures and realizing I was still on ISO 1600 and everything was just white.
Yeah,
whereas at least if you've got an EVF, you'll be able to see the picture.
It 100% saves your ass on a lot of occasions, for sure. And I think, yeah, like from getting a solid set of photos throughout the day, they're absolutely incredible, and they've changed the industry for that. Although, like, literally just last week, rookie error, but I was shooting something out. I've been to set up all my flashes inside for the first dances, and I was just shooting something outside. And I wasn't looking, because I was shooting quite fast. I wasn't looking at the end result on the screen because I knew it was looking fine. My second shooter came out to me. He goes, "Hey, Ben, I think your trigger's on. You're triggering all your flashes in there." I was like, "No!" I went back and looked at what I'd just taken for the last 2 minutes, and it was all crazy white, overexposed. I was like, "Oh no, bad times." So yeah, I still make stupid mistakes like that.
Now, there's a good lesson in there, because I always think that by now, 16 years for you, 15-ish years for me, we should. The analogy I'm going to use is last night I was watching tennis with one of my sons, and he's only recently got into tennis, and he's actually pretty good already. He's got a good grasp of how to hit the ball and stuff. But he's now become an expert of watching tennis. So he sits there saying, none of these players should not be hitting the net. They're professional tennis players. They should get it over the net every single time. The professional tennis player should never hit the net. And I guess the analogy is that you still hit the net even when you're a pro. So what you're saying, firing your flashes, getting a lot of blank frames. And I was shooting some stuff last week and then realized I'd shot it all at like a 30th of a second somehow. And it was all just handheld camera blur.
Yeah.
These things happen.
Trendy now, though, right? You could nail that all day long. No, mate, I hit the net more than I get it over the net. You just got to make sure when you do get it over the net, you absolutely smash that point, though, right?
Yeah, and that's what you were saying before. I guess I really like the line. I can't remember how you said it now, but you said you have to work harder to make an amazing photo.
Yeah,
it's made the basic photos easier, but now you have to work even harder to make amazing photos. So, and just linking it back as well, you're a trained jazz musician.
Yeah.
How much do you think there's kind of jazz in your photography? How is your process still quite jazz style in that you're just a bit all over the place?
You mean chaotic and nobody quite understands it? Yeah, 100%. Yeah. My process is probably just go for it and see what happens, and just make sure you've got in the back of your brain some training that kind of points you in the right direction. But if you're not just letting it flow, it's just going to sound the same as it did the last time you played it or the last time you shot those photos. And I think that's probably sort of subconsciously. Yeah. I think I let music into my photography from that sort of point of view, really.
Yeah, because we've worked together, and I remember I think it might have been the first time we worked together and following you around and realizing you never switch off from trying to take a picture. I think there was one time we were just following the bride and groom from somewhere. Maybe I can't remember whether we were on the way to portraits or something, and we were just behind them, and you'd started picking up a veil and just shooting it from behind and playing with the veil in front of your camera. And we were just walking to somewhere. There was no picture to be taken, really, or that's what I thought. And kind of seeing the way your brain works, in that there might always be potential for a creative photo, not necessarily talking about documentary in its purest form, obviously, but is that how you are when you are a photographer? You're just 100% constantly switched on to the photos that might be able to be taken.
Yeah, I think I think you have to be on a wedding day, because nothing stops. There's never a dead moment in a wedding day. I think if you stop and switch off and just have that moment of just being within your own brain doing nothing, I think you're going to miss stuff. So I always try and make the most of a walk, or try and make the most of any situation between the situation that we're actually going to, because a bride and groom are probably more relaxed at that point, knowing that we're just walking and that nothing's really happening. And in reality, that's probably the photo I'll use more than the one we shot at the place that we were going to, maybe. But if you don't try and you don't keep pressing the button, you're never going to have that photo to at least look at and decide whether it was any good or not. And yeah, I think you can't switch off fully.
No. Definitely. I've been shooting a long time, and I'm pretty proud of my own work and approach. But that was a bit of an eye opener even for me, to see that you were just playing with stuff in a time when I thought we were just going somewhere.
Yeah.
And then then we got to I remember I think it's the same wedding anyway. We were doing portraits, and we had a very a groom that did not like having his pictures taken at all.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to this kind of woodlandy place, and you were doing some cool stuff with some bits and bobs that you carry around in your bag that maybe we'll talk about in a minute. And this groom was absolutely loving having his picture taken, and he was doing all the stuff that at the beginning of the day, he probably would have told you that he would never do, just being quite romantic with the bride, getting really close, not really thinking about the fact he was having his picture taken, being himself. Is that something you've worked on over the years? Because I was astounded at how relaxed you got that guy. Is that something you've worked on over the years, or do you think it just comes naturally? What is it?
Do you know what? I don't know. In my brain, I sort of think not everybody is like a natural, romantic, cuddly kind of groom or bride. But at some point in their like lives as a couple together, they've probably had those like beautiful, relaxed moments where no one else is around and they're just like cuddling on the sofa, and it's just a nice moment. So I often think that like if people are struggling on a wedding day, they've got it in them somewhere, and it might be the most unnatural time to bring it out in front of 2 photographers and a load of cameras and like in the middle of a bush or something. But if you just like, I quite often find if you just like chat to people and just lower the tone and just make it a little bit more calm, you don't have to be like the crazy fun photographer running around all the time. Most of the time I am that guy. But sometimes if you just like bring it down, they just get into that little space of just having a moment away from everybody where everyone's a little bit relaxed. They've had a couple of drinks, so that helps. And I just find that if you just bring it down to that like relaxed level, something special happens, and you get over the initial like 30 seconds of, oh shit, this is really awkward. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden it kind of comes out of people. Not everybody. Sometimes I'll start and I'll attempt it, and I'll attempt to create these like really close romantic photos, and I can tell it's really not working. And at that moment, I will use like just the awkward laughter and the silliness, and we'll go into that and just let that, because it's not video. You can't necessarily tell that they're feeling awkward. They might just be looking happy and relaxed and giggly. And that to me is just a nicer photo if it's them. And that's genuinely all you're going to get out of them at that moment. But yeah, I will always try. And I feel like it's something that I've tried to do all the time, just because I feel like everybody can do it. And I like to push my bride and grooms as far as I can, just to see what they've got going on.
No, I mean, it was inspiring. And the photos were beautiful as well. You know, like this.
Thanks, man.
I was astounded because I'd done groom prep on that wedding because I was second shooting for you. And he just didn't, he would have happily had a wedding with no photographers. That's how much he really did not like the idea of it. Yeah. So then to be 6-8 hours later and he's cuddling his bride in the middle of a load of bushes, connecting that to your the creative side of your work, because I think that's a big part of you is the play side of photography. And I wonder what if this, and wonder what if that, and what if I use this. I know this. You are a big fan of those kinds of wedding photographers, the Sam Hurds of the world, Jeff Newsom as well at one point, and that kind of very creative side of wedding photography. How important is that to you to keep that going? Because I think this is going to be I'm lengthening the question here, I know, but I think as photographers, we go through phases where a lot of us will maybe go through that creative phase and we'll buy a prism and we'll maybe buy something, a little mirror or stuff to dangle in front of our lenses. And then the industry kind of beats that out of you in a way that's like, well, that stuff is unimportant and it's a gimmick and we should all just be focused on the moments. But you've kept hold of that creative side of you, as well as being hyper focused on the moments and the kind of the real authentic part of a wedding. So the question is, that's a long one. The question is just, how do you keep hold of that? How do you keep hold of that in an industry that I think a little bit tries to beat that out of you?
You are so right. If you're not careful, you end up just becoming the same photographer as everybody else, because the industry either frowns upon doing something or calls it a trend that's not a trend anymore. And in your mind, you get in like you overthink things and you get into yourself and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because the industry doesn't like it anymore. But I often think like, screw it, who cares? Like, I'll pick up stuff at a wedding. In fact, I learned this from you years ago. Like, pick up shiny things at weddings, shoot through it, because it can give interest to what could be an average photo. And it could elevate it into a slightly better average photo, or it could make it into an incredible photo if that's what your bride and groom kind of like. Or it just it might block out something that you don't want in a frame, but is important to keep that kind of aspect ratio. So I've got no problem in like picking stuff up, using stuff just to kind of give a bit of creativity to a photo, knowing that I've worked like super hard during the day to nail the real, like not basics, but the really important kind of standard, beautiful photos. I know I've got them in the bag because I've not switched off all day. So when it comes to portraits or even like any other time, I can allow myself 5 minutes just to have a play, just be curious. Half the time it doesn't work, but half the time you go, oh, that was cool. Who knew that a leaf would look wicked? Or who knew that a kitchen whisk at mum's house in the morning could look awesome, like for a bride prep photo? And until you try it, who cares? Who knows? Like, and if you like that, that's awesome. And quite often I'll have a bride who might have seen me doing that, like on Instagram or something. They're like, oh, Ben's here. Look what he's going to shoot through. He's going to play with a bottle. Ben, there's a toaster over there. Why don't you try that? I'm like, it's cool. We've got this. You know, I don't mind that, like, follow me around. I like it. And it breaks up the day for me. Creatively, that's the word. And just allows me to like have a play and bride and grooms quite often think it's a bit of fun as well. Because they don't know what the hell's going on or what it looks like. It's a nice surprise to them as well.
That's the lesson though, isn't it? I mean, on that side of things, I mean, I need to learn this lesson because I've had it beaten out of me. And in some ways, you know, I remember I went through a little phase of, I was shooting groom prep at a venue and there was a toast rack on the table next to me and I picked the toast rack up and put it over the end of my lens, shot some pictures and thought, I'm stealing this toast rack. So I put the toast rack in my bag. And for about 6 months, I shot loads and loads of toast rack photos. Yep. And was really happy with it. And, you know, I used to carry a little battery powered string of blue fairy lights, a little battery powered string of orange fairy lights. And I used to sometimes dangle them in front of my lens for a picture. And I just don't do that stuff anymore. So I guess the lesson is that the reason I don't do it is I've listened too much to the industry. And the lesson you're saying is that bride and grooms don't care what the industry's saying. They care about what their pictures are going to look like and how much fun they're going to have with you on their wedding day when those little moments happen and they get to be part of it.
Yeah, like bride and grooms don't know what the industry's saying most of the time, unless your clients are photographers. But most of the time, bride and grooms have no idea that the industry has gone, oh, you shouldn't pick up toast racks. That's terrible. You certainly shouldn't steal them, Adam Johnson. That's even worse. But like, bride and grooms just want creativity. They want fun. They want to have a good time on their wedding day. And as long as you're nailing the important basic photos that they're going to love in 50 years' time, then who's to say that you can't have fun and just experiment? Because that's what like we all do. I bet the first person that picked up a flash or picked up a prime lens experimented, and the industry said, no, that's not right because people are not looking at the camera. Or, you know, I think people listen too much to other people, and it's human nature. Like we all do it. And I think I have to work really hard to tune it out on a wedding day.
Yeah, no, me too. And
I've been thinking about this quite a lot, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does, because you're thinking too much about the wrong audience. That's the point, isn't it? It's the audience that you're potentially making work for, or thinking about the judgment of, or thinking about the rules that's being set by, is not the people in front of you, the engaged couple, the couple getting married, who've actually booked you for what they love about your work, which has nothing to do with the industry. Yeah. Crazy, really. So, that's amazing, really. And just to wrap things up, if you had a tip for somebody starting out, what would your first tip be for somebody maybe shooting their first wedding or getting into their first season?
The first wedding. If it's your first wedding, like, do all your freaking out in the week before, because I get it. Like, you're gonna freak out. They're pretty crazy days. If you've not like second shot or got any experience at all of wedding, if you're jumping in cold like I did day one as a lead shooter, just like have a basic plan, learn your basics. Just think, what are your like go-to comfortable shots, like family portraits, backlit on the edge of some shade. You know you're going to be in a good place just to make nice, beautiful photos super easily. Just give yourself like a head start with everything and just have a basic plan as to how you can make like good, solid photos. And then from there, just take photos, see what happens. Like, who knows what happens? Like, most of my creative photos are not planned out. They're me going, I wonder what happens if I do this, or if I turn that flash off instead of that one. maybe this would look cool. So just play, experiment, but get the basics right first and slow down, breathe. Just take time in your head. You don't need to capture every single thing a million times. Just slow down.
Good advice. Great advice, in fact.
If only I could have told myself that 16 years ago.
Maybe that was you.
It'd be awesome.
That was you
maybe.
telling that original HBA.
Maybe, yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, I think it must be really hard for a beginner now, because when we started out, we weren't, like you touched on it earlier on, we weren't able to see a trillion YouTube videos and everybody else's work on Instagram. And I think that would have set an unachievable bar for me to look at all that and go, I'm never going to, I just can't take pictures like that.
That's the problem, is that all you see online are people's absolute, like, once in a career highlight photos. Like some of the photographers that I look up to, because I follow them, I see those epic photos, but I might see them 10 times a year as they like recycle them around their Instagram, because they are such epic photos and they use them over and over again because they're so good. You, like, if you only see it once, you might go, bloody hell, are they created that at every single wedding, like at the drop of a hat? Whereas because I've seen it 10 times this year, I know that that's a once in a career photo. And you compare that to what you shoot at your first wedding or in the first like season of weddings, when you go through and cull your images, it's unattainable. So yeah, I think it can be overwhelming getting into the industry now for that reason alone.
Yeah. But the tip is amazing still, because what you're still basically saying is the portfolio will come as long as you just start off by focusing on the people in front of you and just doing a good job. And if you can start 100%. Off by just, your only goal in the beginning is just to do a good, solid job, the rest of it will just come later on.
Yeah, totally. Like self-fulfillment, like do a good job for your couples first and foremost, and do a good job so you're happy with it at whatever level that is. It doesn't have to be like incredible, like fearless, award-winning photography. Just be happy with it in yourself. If the internet didn't exist and you could see no other photos, are you happy with those photos? And if you are, you've nailed it.